Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, we want to embrace unique desire from the women biologically and socially because the female movement should seek the very better life for the women and happiness or freedom, whatever. Within the feminist movement should seek the diffusion of surrogate mother in order for the people who cannot have a baby biologically. This is why we're very proud of the motion. I'm going to give you two things in my speech. Firstly, I set up definitions. Secondly, I'm going to talk about 2 points of something terrors. Firstly, I'm going to talk about why we can make the woman's life happier, especially for people who cannot have a baby in the status quo, for 2 reasons. Number 1, I'm going to talk about the biological level, and number 2, I'm going to talk about the social level. And secondly, I'm going to talk about why female movement can seek the diffusion of surrogacy, why we can support surrogacy as a role in our society. But before that, simple model. Madam Speaker, this is a value judgment debate, and this should be decided by the following parameter. How well the diffusion of surrogacy would help or not help towards the objective of the female movement. So, for example, better for the women's choice, freedom, happiness, the social status of the women, whatever. So, as long as we can prove that this is beneficial for the women, especially for the people who cannot have a baby, who cannot have a dignity, who cannot have a pride, we think this is a debate to be won by the government. I'm going to talk about, firstly, the women's desire. As Madam Speaker, within basically, women have unique desire to have a baby for 2 reasons. Madam Speaker, in the first place, the natural motherhood coming from their biological capacity. What do I mean by that? The natural motherhood is, for example, the hormone balance or the organ. They have an organ to have a baby. As a step, they grow up, they start to recognize themselves as an actor and biological character to have a baby. And it's a very fundamental desire for those people to have a baby at the level of the biologic. Madam Speaker, so within this is very important for those people to have a baby in the first place. And secondly, when they look at their own mother who loved their daughter and who educated them and who taught them a lot, within the role model they see since they were born, it's a murder in the first place, Mr. Speaker, because they are the same sex and the mother is the same sex with their daughter. Daughter starts to think, and I want to be like mother, and in order to be like mother, they must have a baby. However, Madam Speaker, within this there is a problem in that status. So what do I mean by that? Those people cannot have a baby. In that sense, they cannot fulfill their desire, and they cannot get satisfied at the level of biology and at the level of the role model, the perception to naturally have, Madam Speaker. This is not a structural problem, but this is a problem of the very natural desire of the women for every woman in our world. We think this is completely important to support those people. Why is it? Because the female movement should respect this idea that having a baby is very critically connected with the identity of those women. Because having a baby, they can feel, I am a woman and I can satisfy what I think, Madam Speaker. Of course, we do not say all women have that desire. However, as a person targeted to women who want to have a baby, we think this is completely important to help those people in the first place. So in the status quo, they are very critically suffering from the fact they cannot have a baby, they get depressed, in the worst case, they hurt themselves because they get dysfunctional. We think this is problematic. After passing this policy, in order by making them use the surrogate mother, they can have a biological baby which is completely connected with them at the level of biology, Madam Speaker. This gives them the feeling that they are satisfied. This gives them the feeling they are fulfilling their biological role in the first place. So we think in the first place the women's desire should be seeked by the feminist movement. That is our first point. And secondly, Madam Speaker, we think at the level of social level, we think the people who cannot have a baby are disempowered. What do I mean by that? Madam Speaker, social expectation is existing in our status quo. So what is a social expectation? That is, for example, men expect married women to have a baby, and when they notice that they cannot have a baby, they get very depressed, or the other surrounding people also start to say they're dysfunctional, etc. Or, for example, other women who can have a baby, and they start to look down on those people because they're dysfunctional. As a consequence, those people get very stigmatized in our society. We think this is completely serious because they cannot have a pride, they cannot have an identity in the society. In the society, they want to have a role to be a member of the society. However, now they cannot fulfill the role, and this stigmatization is really serious because what the women movement seek for is that the social position and social equality at the level of the gender equality and the women's equality. As a consequence, now we see the serious unfairness between women and between men. That's the consequence we have to support those people. So after we support the women and females movement, support this diffusion of surrogate mother, they can feel proud of themselves in the society. They can feel they have the identity, and they can feel they are saying with the other women, etc. This is very better for themselves. Why is that? Because by altering the rule to by the surrogacy, they can have a baby. Again, Madam Speaker, by altering the rule is very important because it is their own baby, Madam Speaker. So we think on the first level that women's desire biologically is very important. Women's desire at the social level is also serious. The feminist movement to seek for those people. This is our first point. Moving on to the second issue, why feminist movement seeks diffusion of surrogacy, why we can support surrogacy as a role in our society. Madam Speaker, we think that uniquely they use their own body function. This is completely justifiable, Madam Speaker. Why is that? Because, for example, there is a biological difference, men and women. This is what we have to support, the unique function of the women as well as men. For example, the men are doing some blue-collar job. This is very difficult for women because women do not have so much power, etc. This is a biological fact, Madam Speaker. However, as long as men can have a unique functional in our society, women cannot have. This is problematic in the status quo. So we say that we should respect the right of the women to do the surrogate mother in the first place. So this is the point to talking about the people who want to do the surrogate mother. And this is completely justifiable for the feminist movement to support those people. And this is matching between the goal and the status quo. Because in the status quo there is a demand and there is completely good supply from the people who want to do the surrogate mother. This is justifiable for the feminist movement to support those things, and this is better for the position of the women. This is better for the opportunity of the women, because by doing so they can have a better opportunity to earn money, and by doing so they can support the society. This makes a social norm that the women are very functional in our society. But this is completely consistent with the goal of the women's feminist movement. We think this is completely good. For all those reasons, we say that in the first place that women cannot have a baby, are very much suffering in the status quo because of the biological reason, and very much suffering because of the very social reason. This is problematic, and we can support the surrogate mother in order to solve this problem, and this is matching the goal and the supply. So in order for the women's status, in order for the women's happiness, better opportunity and freedom, we are very, very proud to propose the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So let's talk about which stand for and negative. We stand for the feminist movement opposing the diffusion of surrogate motherhood. So for instance, we support feminist movement like seeking for ban on those surrogate motherhood, and also discourage individual prospective surrogate mothers to enter this market. And also, Mr. Speaker, as the Prime Minister rightly said, we are not talking about the actual implication of the feminist movement is going to have on society about, for example, the policies or the attitude of each state. We are talking about, we are basing on the assumption that the effect and the role the feminist movement play is important to some extent, Mr. Speaker, and therefore it should be a principal debate about whether or not they should support diffusion of surrogate mothers. So I have three arguments which will also respond to what I have said. First, I'm going to talk about from the perspective of would be biological mothers. Why do you think it is wrong for them to push the concept that biological capacity is something we should have, and a unique function is something which should be required for women, although that's not quite a man. And second, I'm going to characterize what should be the goal of feminist movement. And last, I'm going to talk about from the perspective of surrogate mothers, why we think this is extremely harmful. So first of all, let's talk about this interesting conception that women need to have the biological capacity, and that should be their unique function, which is different to men. And therefore, without this, women cannot have cannot gain freedom or equality, a number of things. The first affirmative said. No, but before that, we think like as a specific point to rebuttal, we think the first alternative is weirdly basing his case on the assumption that surrogate motherhood is the only way for the woman to have such a child, right? That's first of all factually incorrect, because there are things that about adoptions which are quite prevalent in a current society, especially in the Western liberal states. And it is true, right? It is not the case that biological connections might not exist between those adopted child and also the mothers. But the point is that if you have a child, for example, from like 0 or 1 year old, then at least the personality becomes alike to that Mrs. Speaker mother's, right? And therefore, we think the happiness of like bringing up a child can be gained that way. But secondly, more importantly, if you look at the reality, Mrs. Speaker, the 95% of those like prospective biological mothers who are going to use the system are the rich people, right? Who can't afford to pay for those systems, and therefore they are not advocating for the benefits of the entire women. The feminist movement should care about, and that is why we think their system is flawed in the first place. But more importantly, let's talk about the core part of core flow of the case, Mr. Speaker. Now, if you look at the feminist movement, how they have emerged and the context where they operate, Mr. Speaker, we think they are trying to free women from the social norm that they should be baby factories. They should be, for example, housewives, Mr. Speaker, who should be like locked into the house as opposed to men working freely in a corporate culture and so forth, right? That's why they are advocating for things like equal or equal pay, because women will like pay less in the corporate society even though they go well, because they're seen as the housewives of, for example, like non-breadwinners, right, in those societies. And that's the feminist movement have been fighting for so long, to free women from this kind of like social norm which locks in, Mr. Speaker, like locks them into the houses and deprive them of their choices, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, it is extremely harmful and it is extremely pernicious for the affirmative to push the concept that biological capacity is some necessary condition for the women to have their identity, individuality being flourished, right? It is wrong for them, Mr. Speaker, to say that this biological capacity, if you cannot have a mother, you're not women, you cannot be happy as a woman, Mr. Speaker. The identity women cannot be established without this biological capacity to conceive a child, Mr. Speaker. That's exactly the opposite of what feminist movement have been aiming for and fighting for a very long time. We think that is simply not what the feminist movement should do, Mr. Speaker. Now, so turning now to the second point, which is about the role of feminist movement. Now, I've already like flagged, Mr. Speaker, in the first argument, but let's talk about it in detail, Mr. Speaker. Now, as I said, feminist movement role is to protect the rights of women, Mr. Speaker. So it's not just about demand and supply problem, right? Even though there's demand and supply, Mr. Speaker, that is not what the feminist movement should handle. If you're talking about states, for example, like thinking about whether or not they legalize a word surrogate motherhood, yes, it might be the role of the state to equally compare the various ramifications to various actors. But when it comes to feminist movement, they should specifically and exclusively focus on the ramifications of women, right? That is the reason why, Mr. Speaker, they are opposing things like pornography, although pornography might have like a beneficial effect to other Western females, because pornography, at least primarily, harms women, Mr. Speaker. Feminist movement opposes that sort of thing, Mr. Speaker. And secondly, it is not enough for the government to say choice is good, right, Mr. Speaker? They should talk about how choice is valid for the women, how that choice is good for the women, Mr. Speaker, as a whole society. Because if the choice does not benefit women, again, it might be the reason for the state to respect choice. But when it comes to feminist movement, they should specifically, Mr. Speaker, focus on whether that choice is beneficial or valid in any sense to women, right? And that's the reason why they're kind of being generic. They should focus more on the role and specific nature of feminist movement in the first place. So having established the basics of this debate, Mr. Speaker, moving on to the last and most important, which is about the implication to the surrogate mothers as opposed to biological mothers. Now, I have several reasons why we think surrogate mothers should not be embraced and espoused by the feminist movement. The first reason is, Mr. Speaker, we think consequence is unimaginable on the part of those prospective biological, surrogate mothers, Mr. Speaker. Madam Speaker, because obviously the physical, Madam Speaker, the physical pain, first of all, if you talk about the physical pain, it might apply for the women in general when they are pregnant. But the point here is that most of the surrogate mothers who enter the market are the poor people, and obviously they are poor, and there's a reason why they enter this market in the first place, out of need of money. And therefore, it might be okay for us to allow women to conceive a child out of their genuine choice, born to a child. But in this specific circumstance, we are looking at the women because of the financial motives, which cloud their judgment to a significant degree. They are almost, of course, but they receive emotional blackmail that their surroundings and their families are suffering and starving now, Mr. Speaker. That's why they have to use their money for that very same reason that we don't allow women trade in any country, because they have emotional blackmail to those people to utilize their money for like money, Madam Speaker. We think like this choice should not be allowed, Mr. Speaker. And secondly, more unique harm to the surrogate market is that the experience of being separated from a child, you have in a room for 10 months, Mr. Speaker. 10 months 24 hours a day, 7 days, Madam Speaker, this does not apply for the general pregnancy, right? This is unique to surrogate mothers, that you have to be separated, Mr. Speaker, and isolated from the child, the baby you had in your womb. And this is the reason why if you look at countries like India, where this is already illegal, there's a fight between those biological mothers and surrogate mothers over a child's parental rights, right? This clearly shows that this emotional trauma of having to give up a child which you have had in the womb for 10 months is extremely harmful. This cannot be imagined beforehand, to speak, and that is why, from a choice perspective, solely, we think this is extremely harmful. But secondly, more importantly, this contributes to commercialization for women, right? So let's distinguish surrogate motherhood from other choices which are undertaken by women. Now, if you're talking about even celebrities and showbiz talents, at least individual females are utilizing their skills and talents which are unique to them, right? Which is highly individualized. But when it comes to pregnancy, it is something which can be done by any woman, to speak, or women, if they have the women, if they have the biological capacities, right? There is a uniqueness and distinction from those other choices, even including showbiz or celebrities, idols, and whatever those things, to speak. And therefore, as I said, feminist movement's goal is to pursue individuality and identity, to speak, of women. For example, they should not be confined to the concept that they should be baby factories, staying at home, and so forth, right? But what they're doing is that they are combining arms, condemning those women to the role and structure which was opposed by the feminist movement, which should be opposed by the feminist movement. But during a long time, we think this commercialization should not be accepted. And finally, and last, Mr. Speaker, we think feminist movement should focus on the unity of the women, awakening the gender identity of the women, right? What they're doing is that rich women are going to buy off the poor women, or they can, Madam Speaker, under this rule, right? And that is why feminist women have been fighting for so long time that although individual women were not aware of the fact that their choice is influenced by the structure, they think that they're naturally husbands. But feminist women are trying to enlighten their conscience that it is wrong. They are forced by the structure to be husbands as opposed to a genuine choice. But what they want to do is that they create unity between the rich women and the poor women, because rich women are utilizing the poor women and condemning to the circumstance which is undesirable. And for those three comprehensive reasons, we think this is not something which should be espoused and embraced by the feminist movement. For those reasons, we are very proud of this.
So ladies and gentlemen, they are actually talking about the effects of diffusion of surrogate motherhood and actually entrenching the value that the individual woman should have this kind of baby. However, I think that is currently happening in the status quo, and we need to tackle the cause of the problem by actually embracing the woman's function, by actually empowering the woman to have the capacity to alter their job in the first place, by letting the women who have the capacity and who don't have capacity equally standing in society. Therefore, we propose. So, as a new substantive, I'd like to talk about why under status quo is utilizing the own function and ability is justifiable by examining the several cases. And more than that, I'd like to compare the trade-offs between the people who are in the vulnerable and unfair, the structured situation, and people who have the choice, which is actually the better calculus and better outcome that feminists must support. Before that, several rebuttals towards the legal opposition. Firstly, so legal opposition came up and said, there is an alternative, adoption, right? But they talked about, though DNA might be different, but personality can be constructed immediately after the birth, things like that. That's enough. It's not true, Mr. Speaker. Firstly, the people, actually women, have the very feeling that they want intrinsically, that they want to have their own baby instead of having the others in the first place. Because as my partner clearly described, that women have the intrinsic feeling of being a motherhood, of their own children, sharing the same blood, sharing the same DNA, they can actually construct and actually grow up and feed and whatever, but they cannot share their own DNA itself, and we cannot empower those women in the first place. There's a demand and supply mismatch. More than that, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to societal aspect, men and society, for example, the rest of the family member, don't satisfy this result in the first place, Mr. Speaker, because men, actually, for example, some reason, for some reason for men to marry a woman is to have their own baby, is to provide the children who have the same DNA, Mr. Speaker. And other societal members, such as family member, grandmother, whatever, would like to actually have and impose a certain expectation that their son's DNA will be carried out to their children, Mr. Speaker. So those people can have this adoption that the rest of society don't satisfy. More than that, Mr. Speaker, though we can actually provide that adoption in the first place, there should be a still huge disparity between the women who have their own baby biologically with the same DNA and who didn't, Mr. Speaker, just because these people can't have their own body function due to some illness or disease, Mr. Speaker. Just letting situation going on. It's just letting the unfairness to going on. The anti-feminist movement that's actually standing for embracement of the feminist and the female identity, Mr. Speaker. We cannot tolerate this situation. More than that, they talked about only rich are likely to be benefited by the system. Not true, Mr. Speaker. Firstly, the actually diffusion of surrogate motherhood does not include not only this kind of financial incentive such as volunteer activity, but also the surrogacy conducted by the rest of the family member, which is broadly conducted in the European society, Mr. Speaker, in the first place. So poor people can actually achieve. More than that, if you actually increase the number of females who are trying to engage this system, as a market mechanism, the poor people and the middle people are likely to actually engage those situations by paying the less fee, Mr. Speaker, in order to actually incentivize those women to compete against each other for the women, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, it doesn't benefit only rich people. So therefore, the assumption does not stand. More than that, they talked about after this situation, we're entering a law that every single people should have this kind of. And they should have the baby, every single woman should have the baby in the first place. First of all, it's not true, right? However, so many people are actually allowed to opt out from this situation. And actually, female women are also actually embracing the women to seek their own careers by having their own standards in the first place. So we say having children or not having children is up to their decision. And more than that, on our side, actually providing the solution of the situation is happening in the conservative community. So the core reason why those kind of men and the rest of society they expect and think that some women who physically impossible to have their own children is simply because they cannot have their own baby, Mr. Speaker. That's why we clearly told you that by having the solution, by letting those individual women to alter their own function to the other people, Mr. Speaker, these people are able to fully embrace themselves, are able to get their own social position, which is exactly easy to be competed with the other people, and men actually get satisfied with the existence, Mr. Speaker. So the current problem is that just because the woman cannot have this body function to have their own children, Mr. Speaker, men are automatically, and the rest of the community are automatically discriminating those women in the first place, Mr. Speaker. This is actually unfair treating in the first place. Females should be evaluated because evaluating their entire character, including their characteristic, and including their job opportunity, including their ability, whatever. Just targeting the specific malfunction of the body and disempowering themselves is extremely outstandingly bad, Mr. Speaker. Female movement must rectify this situation. So they talked about that porn is as a create the harm, so we are actually opposing. That we don't actually opposing the old porn itself, Mr. Speaker. We are sometimes the problem is the gender balance are happening in your circle of the pornography industry, Mr. Speaker. That's why feminist movements are actually supporting the female porn in the first place, Mr. Speaker. So they're saying it's fundamentally wrong. And more than that, they talked about the case study of India. The emotional blackmail situation is happening, will be damaging individual women in the first place. But female women are ready to provide the full consequences of those information and those choices. They're like what we're currently doing to support an abortion itself, Mr. Speaker. So we say, see, we allow
so feminist movement are embracing. So having actually said that, moving on to my substantives. So in what cases females are allowed to maximize their own body and utilize their own function? For example, females are allowed to use their own beauty to get promoted or get evaluation within the company. And if as a consequence, females get in the position of the higher position such as executive, and females are in the position to use the power to change the societal norm and change the norm board of executive, whatever. It is fundamentally supported by the feminist movement. More than that, for example, as an occupation, for example, becoming a model or becoming an idol, it is extremely justifiable to use their own function in the first place. There is no difference between using this kind of beauty and appearance and body shape and using your own womb in the first place. Because the distinction between organ trading and our plan is that organ trading, the reason why feminist movement don't support organ trading is not actually intrinsic to the female itself. It's because the reason why feminist movement support this kind of surrogacy itself is actually intrinsic to female. That's why in some cases females support female pornography, females support the female-run prostitution, brothel, whatever figure. So we clearly say the people are the vulnerable and unfair structure problem. They're actually victimized. We are more than happy to let the people to make the decision and alter the problem. Therefore, we are very practical.
Thank you very much. Deputy Leader Lexis, anytime you're ready.
It's a long time since I've actually felt offended during a debate. What they want to do is replace the feminist movement with a room full of drunken men deciding what women should be, how women should act, based on misogynist norms they created. A little bit of rebuttal. They said that women intrinsically desire biological children. Does that mean a woman who doesn't desire a biological child isn't a woman? They said that this supports women because they support working women. They support women who don't want to have a child, while saying that as desire is intrinsic to them as a person, intrinsic to them as an individual. I think that's a disgusting stance. They try to tell us that there's a stigma between women who have children and women who cannot, and that we need to address that. What we say is the feminist movement should address that stigma, not give in to the misogynist norm that created it, right? That stigma was created by men who want to pressure their wives into having children, men who think that women's purpose is to have babies. That norm is what feminism was created to fight against and has been fighting against for the last 50 years. Then they try to tell us that we need to do this because men will discriminate against women, and this will be really unpleasant for women. What we say is that there are men out there who discriminate against women who don't wear the burqa. There are men out there who discriminate against women who have not had female genital mutilation. What we say, men's idea of what a woman should be is not the prerogative of the feminist movement. The feminist movement is to decide what women should be from the perspective of women, not what women should be from the perspective of men. And the feminist movement should fight those norms, not surrender to them. Then they try to tell us that, these surrogate mothers will have full information, and so they'll be making an informed decision, right? I cannot understand what it would feel like to love a child, though I lived with my parents and was a child for 20 years. I don't think anyone in this room who hasn't had a child can conceive of the bond that a parent has towards their child, can conceive of what it would be like to rather die than let this thing come to harm, right? That's not an easy thing to comprehend, especially when you're in a vulnerable position, especially when you're being pressured to undergo this procedure, especially when the people around you are dependent on you getting money for doing this, right? We don't think that these poor, vulnerable women can truly have informed consent to going through this procedure, and then love this baby, have this deep attachment to this baby, and then be forced to have it taken away from them. We don't think they can consent to that. But what am I going to bring you today? I'm going to bring you a new, unique point, okay? My point, they've talked talked the entire time about infertile women, how this only applies to infertile women. What I'm going to tell you is that only 5% of the people who go through this are going to be infertile women. 95% of the women who use substitute fertilization are going to be wealthy women, right? They're going to be women who don't want to go through the unpleasantness of being pregnant. There are going to be women who don't want to go through the pain of childbirth. There are women who don't want to look fat in their new dress. Women who don't want to look bloated with the baby inside of them, right? There are going to be women who can afford to outsource the unpleasantness of pregnancy to poor, vulnerable women who have no choice but to accept it because it's a Hobson's choice, right? It's a forced choice. It's not a real one. And then I'm going to tell you how this uniquely should be something the feminist movement tries to avoid. So what's going to happen? What we say is that there are women in society who have lots of money, right? They can easily afford to pay a woman even $10,000 or $20,000 to bear a child for them, right? It's not it's not an impediment to them. The cost is not an impediment to them. And they don't want to go through the unpleasantness of bearing a child for 9 months. It messes with your hormones. Many women feel that they look unattractive when they're going through pregnancy. They feel heavy or just in a general unpleasant way, right? And if possible to avoid it, lots of women would prefer to avoid the unpleasantness and the pain of childbirth. They say that childbirth is so painful, it breaks the scale of what we consider as pain. When they ask women on a scale of 1 to 10, how painful is childbirth, women genuinely answer 11 or 12. Right? This is something that if you can avoid it, you try to avoid it. I would try to avoid it if I was a woman as well, if I had that option. But what happens is that the women who are now going to go through this are the poor, are the disenfranchised, are the weak, right? So there's going to be the same amount of pain, the same amount of harm in society, but that harm is going to be transferred from the rich to the poor without the poor being really able to make a decision. And what this is going to do, this is going to physically manifest divisions in class, where rich women are never going to be seen to be pregnant, are never going to be seen to have those hormonal reactions, are never going to be seen to be bloated or fat from pregnancy, whereas poor women, especially women from cultures that have lots of childbirth, or in which having lots of babies is a kind of an accepted thing, will have all of those physical things put onto them, and there'll be a stark physical difference between these two classes. And what will that do? That means the perception of the rich towards the poor, of rich women towards poor women, will be one of utility, right? Rich women will look at poor women as a tool they can use to bear their child and nothing more. They will look at poor women as a surrogate through which they can achieve their end and not any more useful. And the reason why this is unique is because only women can fulfill this role, right? This isn't just rich versus poor. This is rich women versus poor women. And why is that particularly bad for feminism? What we say is that feminism needs to be premised upon an idea of unity, amongst women, as their identity, right? Unless women can come together and support things together and have common aims, the feminist movement is destined to fail, right? If the feminist movement fractures, if some women look at other women as less than or inferior to or tools, then the feminist movement cannot have solidarity, cannot meaningfully achieve its goals, right? And this is what has been plaguing the feminist movement for a long time. I'm going to give you an example. In America, black women have been politically torn between supporting the prerogatives of black men and supporting the prerogatives of women as a whole. But because of identity politics, they sided with black men because they looked at white women as oppressors. And likewise, white women looked at black women as less than them, right? As inferior to them. And this has made it very difficult for the feminist movement to put forward a consistent message and to consistently achieve the rights it needs to achieve for women. Because there's this fundamental division between different kinds of women. But it's only when women seize their identity and hold that identity kind of in unity and together that these goals can be realistically achieved on a political scale. And so what they're going to do is create this split. If the feminist movement supports this is the feminist movement saying, these poor women, we don't care that they have to go through all this pain. We don't care about class difference. We don't care about the perceptions of rich women towards poor women. That's not important to us, right? We don't value those differences, right? And this sends a message that these things aren't important, that women don't need to care about these things, and women don't need to care about poor, more vulnerable women, and that women who are poor, women from these communities, it's legitimate to use them for this end and only for this end, and to see them, as you said, as baby-making machines. Things you can pay, a service you can order, to avoid a little bit of inconvenience for you. So what have we shown you? We've shown you that if they're they're trying to say that like they support feminism, like they have really failed, because they said things such as women intrinsically desire X, and women have a biological need to do Y, right? They've argued that women should conform to the norms set by men, rather than opposing them, rather than fighting against them, rather than trying to set new norms, right? Whereas we've shown very clearly how the feminist movement can't value all choice, we can't value the burqa, and that especially the feminist movement needs political unity, needs to have unity between different classes, between different races, and it hopes to achieve any of its goals in the future. And for those reasons, we are extremely proud to oppose the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, JPDU. Government Whip, anytime you're ready, hear you.
Two classes in today's debate. First, I'm going to talk about why this kind of movement should support the female to choose the surrogacy itself. And second, I'm going to talk about why this kind of movement should support people who are the surrogate mother in the status quo to be and to live as a surrogate mother after a long time. First of all, what about the why movement should support the females to choose the surrogacy? Our partner already told you that supports the female movement should support the equal status ever for the people who can, even for the people who cannot have a baby and the status quo because of biological reasons. We give three analyses. First, we give you an analysis about the unique identity of the motherhood, which comes from the self-expectation and which comes from their unique value of their body itself. And second, we already told you about daily life, which was completely ignored by their self-love, which means that they see the mother in their daily life. It means that they want to be those kind of mother instead of father. There are some kind of choices that those kind of females are doing to be there. And thirdly, we already told you about social pressure. The males are pressing this kind of movement by the idea that those kind of people should have children in the status quo. Listen to the first thing they say about this kind of analysis was about adoption. Then we can use adoption in first places. First of all, we think that there's a biological linkage. But Deputy Prime Minister already told you that social pressure is also going to those kind of places, those kind of adoptions in the status quo in some time. We already told you that there's kind of social pressure. If those kind of female cannot have those kind of biological children in their status, they are discriminating in status quo and in their kind of paradigm. And second, the fact is that this kind of stigma, which they are somehow or want to say about this kind of created by male or and so on, this kind of social norm is bad or and so on. It's not about our paradigm. We think that it is not good because fighting with this kind of philosophical argument that male is bad and female should ban or this kind of thing will not make anything, ladies and gentlemen. We think that we have to give the direct benefit toward the female to not be suffered because they cannot have a baby in the status quo, ladies and gentlemen. So if the female movement are opposing and fight against this kind of social norm toward the male, we cannot do anything in the status quo toward the people who are suffering in now status quo, ladies and gentlemen. So we don't think that it's important. And second thing there's talked about was about we are pushing idea toward the female who you should have the biological baby or and so on, ladies and gentlemen. First thing we have to talk about is about we are pushing the choices, ladies and gentlemen. We are supporting the choices. Who chose to get the surrogacy mother, help of the surrogacy mother in the status quo? We are not supporting the people. We are not forcing the people who don't support this kind of thing, ladies and gentlemen. So there's already misunderstanding our analysis from our point, ladies and gentlemen. And second thing there's our state. And third thing there's our state. What about this? We are discriminating takes money a lot, even in the status quo, ladies and gentlemen. So we think that there's analysis doesn't stand in both places. And second, my partner already told you by giving the example of Europe that even the poor people can be helped by the surrogate mother in status quo. And thirdly, my partner already told you that the kind of market principle will have those kind of people, poor people in our paradigm. Because if we support this kind of female movement, if we are supported by the female movement, and if actually those kind of surrogate mother will improve, we think that this kind of support and demand will work to decline the fact and decline the price of those kind of situations. So we don't think the price or discrimination for female is not worth in their paradigm. So moving on to second criteria about why we support the surrogate mother to live as a surrogate mother. Now, by partner orientation, that we have to support their identity to use their body and unique actor, to be the unique actor as a female, and use this kind of unique body to do the unique act, to do the unique thing that they can do. The surrogate mother can fulfill their identity as a female by working as a surrogate mother in our paradigm. And my deep promise to give you an example about building the beauty in the entertainment industry, or building beauty in the company, or whatever. Those kind of things is already supported by the female action. There is a lot of analysis that's like that, but we do not support the female movement cannot support pornography, which is discriminating or whatsoever. Ladies and gentlemen, our side also clearly told you that the female movement is not actually the opposing to the pornography itself. We are opposing to an unbalance of the gender inside of the pornography in the status quo. If this kind of unbalance is solved, for example, by the female pornography or and so on, we are happy to support those kind of pornography in our paradigm. And next thing the other side will talk about is about consequences, ladies and gentlemen. Because those kind of surrogate mother's consequences, it's not known and cannot imaginable for the people. We cannot do it. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, my partner already told you that it is the role of the female movement to support those kind of choices by giving the information about those kind of consequences. And this is a role to support those kind of choices, maximize the choices in our paradigm. And there's a right answer was like this. Look, we cannot imagine the mothers failing or and so on. Ladies and gentlemen, if it is true, there's some of us are opposing to make baby by themselves because they don't imagine there's consequences, even if they make the baby by themselves, ladies and gentlemen. If it is the irrational choices, they're opposing also this kind of thing. We think it is unrealistic. And there another analysis is like that. Yeah. Look. They're irrational. Those kind of people who do the surrogate mother is quite irrational. Ladies and gentlemen, we think that it is also adapted for their analysis about adoption itself. We think that it is not only a unique problem of our side of the house about surrogate mother, ladies and gentlemen. So there's also self-contradicting with the example of adoption. And both things their side of talk about in gifted leader of opposition was like the first, we are factorized the poor people, surrogate mothers in our side of the house, and the unity of the women is collapsed, ladies and gentlemen. But we think it is not true. We don't care it is important. Because first of all, we already chosen the market principle will work and poor people can also use it. So it is not to factorize the poor surrogate mother even. And secondly, we don't care about unity itself because we're not going to care unity because direct idea by the about baby itself is very diverse identity is there, ladies and gentlemen. There are the people who support the surrogate mother, there are the women who are not supporting surrogate mother, and those kind of diverse idea is existing in our society. If there's kind of analysis is supporting to oppose the surrogate mother itself, they're collapsing the society unity itself. Because our side of us are supporting the both idea to choose this one or this one, do the surrogate mother or do not the surrogate mother, ladies and gentlemen. So we are supporting those kind of two ideas different from their side of us who are collapsing the unity itself, ladies and gentlemen. And fourth thing, and last thing we have to talk about is their idea about fight between mother and surrogate mother, which their deputy leader of show was talked about. Ladies and gentlemen, we think it is a systemical problem, or not about the surrogate mother itself, but about the law or the system or itself, which can be solved even in our proposal with the existence of the surrogate mother. Ladies and gentlemen, we think the choice of the female is the first priority to support by the female actions and female movement. This is the reason why we support. Thank you.
Now I'd like to
besides lack of engagement from Dr. Bench to Yuki's point, the crucial mistake on that side is that they have overemphasized the fact that women should be empowered by being enrolled in business that is unique, biologically unique to women. Because if you say that, you are totally going against what the feminist movement stood for decades, Mr. Speaker. Women should be able to be proud of themselves, and women should be able to maximize their choice in an equal way as men. Like, this emphasis on equality was the goal of feminist movement, to persuade everyone that women are no different from men. But what your side of the house is doing is that telling everyone that women have a unique biological feature that should be exploited by rich women. We think that is wrong, Mr. Speaker. So we have three questions. Firstly, the nature of choice made by these surrogate mothers. Secondly, the effect to women who are directly involved in surrogate motherhood. And thirdly, secondly, about the effect to wider society, those women who are not involved in surrogate mother. And thirdly, effect to women who are directly involved in surrogacy. So firstly, about nature of choice. Now, firstly, as Thomas pointed out, we're not really sure if this business are going to be informed or not in the first place. We never really heard a sufficient engagement on that. But secondly, we have to keep in mind that who we are talking about in today's debate. If we're talking about rich or like Jewish girl or middle class doing surrogate mother, then maybe we're totally fine. But that is not the reality. If you implement surrogacy in liberal democracies, it's more likely like some African American 18-year-old girl who are going to do surrogate motherhood in the United States. That characteristic was never rebutted by that side. It was conceded. And if that is the case, then can we really be sure that women are making an active choice? We do not believe it. We think that it's most likely that women will be forced to do all of these risky jobs, because those women in middle class, rich women, will be attending college and will be getting good jobs. Do not have to do this surrogate motherhood, right? So in most cases, women will be from poor background. So that, we think, is damaging to their argument about choice, because women are not making a genuine choice at all. But thirdly, we suggest that this choice is socially constructed. Yes, it is true that biologically, in nature, women are the only one who can bear a child, who can get pregnant. We concede that. But the problem is we are debating in a context where there's an emphasis on expectation built against women to be pregnant. That was the exact analysis which we heard from government bench when they started talking about grandmother, when they started talking about women getting married to be pregnant, to get a child. That kind of emphasis is pushing women even further to be pregnant. So women are not making a choice. Women are making a choice which was made by men, and that is the problem, and that is what we have to break. Lastly, this analogy of models and women being able to sell their beauty, and therefore women should be able to sell their body in this case as well. There's a critical difference, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, being a model or selling your beauty is not unique to women. There are a lot of men who are models, right? So therefore this feminist movement pushing women to be a model does not lock women up, and does not feed into this expectation, patriarchic expectation, which is built under the status quo. But secondly, beauty can reflect your effort that you have made through the years. The fact that you have kept your healthy lifestyle might be the result that you're beautiful. But if you're talking about pregnancy, as we have suggested in opposition, any woman can do it. And that is the problem. Women are not utilizing their skills. Women are not utilizing their talents. And that's exactly what men will think as well. So there's a critical difference between being a model and being a surrogate mother. So we think that in terms of choice, it falls on our side. Going to the second clash about the implication towards wider society, including women and also men, but women who are not involved in surrogacy. Now, God would emphasize the necessity for feminist movement to concentrate on women who are suffering on the ground now, those women who are completely infertile. Now, that is true, but it is also true that feminist movement have to care about wider implication of, like in this case, this job of being a surrogate mother. And the first thing we have suggested is that this policy will lead to emphasizing the unique biological feature of women and emphasizing the fact that women are actually different from men. And the only way for poor women, especially, to get money is to be a surrogate mother, and instead of doing exactly the same thing as men. So this would emphasize the already existing norms which the feminist movement has to break. And we heard pretty much no engagement on this analysis, and this is the core argument of off-bench. But secondly, Thomas gave me an interesting argument about how this policy creates division between women in society. Now, it was misunderstood by Doug Witt. It is true that there are a lot of people who oppose surrogacy and who support surrogacy. That was not the point. The point was you're creating a division between rich women and poor women. That was the analysis which Thomas built their argument on. And as long as you guys never rebutted the point, how in most cases, in the vast majority of cases, women will be from poor background, you are encouraging rich women to exploit poor women. And we think feminist movement should empower every woman, regardless of socioeconomic background. So you are going against the feminist movement's role. But lastly, about women who are directly involved in surrogacy. The first thing we have, they suggest that, yeah, a woman can get a child, that's a benefit to women, you're empowering women. But on the other hand, it is also true that you are harming women as well. Like emotional ties between children that you kind of talked about, or how women are not able to freely move around for 10 months and being enslaved by their children, or how women cannot how women are being altered of their identity, that her lifestyle has totally changed, etc. So there are all of these harms. So it is a bit unfair for government to pretend that surrogacy only brings benefit to women who are involved in surrogacy. But secondly, they talked about discrimination, that there are discriminations surrounding women who are infertile. Now firstly, as Thomas pointed out, it is not the case that only infertile women will apply for surrogacy this market. In fact, rich women who doesn't want to get burden of pregnancy will do it. So only protecting the infertile woman doesn't really support your case. But secondly, this discrimination itself should be something which feminist movement should break. The fact that there is discrimination just because you are not able to get pregnant is something which feminist movement should stand for. Now, if it takes 100 years, 200 years to break this norm, then maybe God's analysis of necessity can take this debate. But we are reaching the tipping point where we can actually break this norm, where there's an increasing number of women being enrolled in colleges, enrolled in working places, working just as effectively as men. So if we can wait a bit more time, we are able to actually break the fundamental cause of why women have to be discriminated and feel less of themselves. So for all of these reasons, we are proud of this.
Now to close the opposition case, reply speakers here.
Now, let's look at how the opposition won this debate. The concept of feminist movement from the founding is extremely simplistic, right? The concept of a choice is important, and that should be the whole premise of the feminist movement. Then it became explicit at the stage of the government speech when we said, we have to care about the benefits which the women can accrue from the surrogate motherhood. Well, if that is the case, it doesn't have to be that feminist movement is there to save women, right? Because, if it is okay for women to choose whatever they want, well, whatever kind of action which is taken by women is okay under their conceptions, right? Because it might be beneficial, it might be desired by some individual women on the ground. But we told you how that is not the case at the very beginning, from the outset of negative case, Mrs. Speaker, as well as we're talking about not neutral actors, but we're talking about the feminist movement specifically and exclusively. We have to focus upon whether or not the particular choice we're looking at is good for them or achieve the concept of good society in terms of gender equality and women's autonomy, and that's what we told you, which they never engaged with. Now let's look at the details of surrogate motherhood, Madam Speaker. Now let's also look at the choice argument which was given by the plaintiff. Even if we have proved the feminist movement as a whole should be praised by the concept of choice of individual women, we don't think they have proven that choice is valid, because we gave a number of analysis about how they have emotional blackmail. Because if you think about women willing to go through pains and agonies, obviously, as we said, it is realistic to assume that two women are going to undertake the business of being a surrogate mother, right? And they miss the nuance of our case when they say we can just inform them, right? Because we're not talking about a lot of information. We're talking about a circumstance. They are locked in to the structure where they have to resort to this measure when they are, for example, families are starving, when they have to get money weekly, and so forth, right? And furthermore, it is odd, right? Because like when they say, for example, we oppose all pregnancy. Now, for instance, if you look at the example which I did, which is about organ trade, according to their logic, there's a distinction between organ trade and voluntary donations, right? But whether or not the financial incentive comes into play, there needs to be a distinction between those two things. We're talking about a situation where the financial incentives comes into play and cloud the judgment. That's the uniqueness of this pregnancy as opposed to pregnancy in general. And furthermore, we touched the unique harm attached to surrogate motherhood, which is different to the general pregnancy. We talked about the fact that experience of being separated from the child and baby which you have in a room for 10 months is extremely brutal, which cannot be experienced for the general pregnancy where you can sustain connection with the child, right? We told you the example of a fight. Yes, the fight itself might be solved, but the point here is that this example clearly points to the fact the mental one which is suffered through by the surrogate mother is extremely harmful, which cannot be imagined beforehand, right? And the choice itself is invalid. But more than that, we told you how the choice is socially structured. It's interesting that they talked about throughout the first speaker, the pressure by man, but the pressure by society can be the reason to adopt this motion. But that is not the case. They are only buying into the social structure, which is disadvantageous to the women, right? Then we have to talk about what the feminist movement should react to this kind of pressure by man society. We told you they should not buy into this kind of negative social norm. They have to fight against social norm, and that's what we've been doing for years. I told you the example of equal work for equal pay, They have to create a society that women are not locked into the role of baby factories, housewives, caring for child. Women have to be autonomous according to the feminist movement worldview, right? And that is why this unique function should not be prioritized, right? This norm should not be accepted by the feminist movement. They have to fight for each other. Why? Because we told you from the outset of the opposition's case how they have a commercialization, which is unique to any kind of example, for example, showbiz talents or celebrities, right? Because this business of surrogate motherhood can be done by any and every single woman with a room speaker. Anyone can do it. Baby factories. That is not taking into consideration the individuality or identity which can apply for other jobs which women are doing. And lastly, we talked about the important point about unity. They dismissed the point saying that unity isn't important. That is not the case. Solidarity is extremely important for women's movement to achieve any kind of goal because they have to collectivize the support and power of all women as opposed to one single class of women, right? For them to achieve any kind of political goal. So for all those reasons, we are extremely proud of this motion.
We are the ones that propose the salvation for the woman, who are actually fighting for this harmful situation and structural injustices that discriminates the women who are incapable to biologically have their baby. Opposition claim and accuse us, saying this choice is bad. Okay. However, we are actually talking about this kind of radical stance that try to oppose it principally, and we are becoming a little bit realistic to seek the better result would tangibly benefit the individual on the ground. So our side of the house have the more better interpretation to save this individual who are actually edge of the desperation. So I have two things to sum up this debate. Firstly, so is it suitable, applicable to the female movement? Secondly, I'd like to talk about the trade-off. Which actor we need to protect? That their harm come from that side of the house and our problem within the status quo. Firstly, so a man favor choice. This is the main argument coming from the side opposition, right? The two things from side opposition. Firstly, my partner Prime Minister clearly said it is also actually the female-led choice made by their female own desire. Likewise, the idealization to be a mother, or same as the girl wants to be an actress, the girl wants to be a female president like Gillard, speaker. They never have ever told us any sort of responses. This clearly stands. We need to embrace their motherhood. They need to embrace their own identity construction, and we have no reason to oppose it. Secondly, they thought that we actually pointed out this is a choice to be a surrogate motherhood, Mr. Speaker. It's providing a better type of flavor to use your beauty, to use your feminine character formation, the feminine appearance to get rewarded and promoted and get higher position in the society, Mr. Speaker. So what this side of the house said, like we still principally oppose this kind of stuff because it's actually man-led choice, right? So we have to concede it to some extent, right? However, what kind of like thing they can do by opposing it in the first place, Mr. Speaker? They never ever do that, and they never ever show any sort of mechanism how to crack down the norm itself in the Mr. Speaker within the status quo. They actually said opposing itself is fundamentally good, but these guys need to be responsible for the victims on the ground who are actually sacrificed by this opposing female movement in the first place. Freedom of opposition said, for the sake of some females' benefit, we shouldn't sacrifice the other group of females. This is what exactly this side of the house is doing in the first place, Speaker. They are actually, for the sake of intangible satisfaction of some group of females, Mr. Speaker, they are actually tangibly sacrificing the female on the ground who are in the vulnerable situation, suffering from the desperation and infinite discrimination coming from the society. We shouldn't tolerate this situation. That's why we have to kind of direct liberal and realistic approach to seek the better outcome, to seek the better situation that actually tangibly empower the woman. Because without having it, we can never ever change the norm and that we want to achieve. Secondly, about the trade-off. So opposition side talk about division between rich and poor will be uniquely created. But their side have never ever engaged the system that poor can also engage into the situation by having their family member, by having the market mechanism. That's why we are actually supporting diffusion itself. They never ever engage with us. More than that, Mr. Speaker, they talked about interlocking situation into the job opportunity of this situation. More than the first thing these people actually willingly chose to be in this situation. They chose to be into the situation. We have nothing to accuse it, whatever the consequence. More than that, we actually, by having those kind of people who are willingly becoming and this kind of role, we actually protect individuals who are facing the situation that impossible to avoid the discrimination, impossible to get the social position, impossible to get rid of from the structural disempowerment, Mr. Speaker. We are the